Shiro Nakamura melded philosophies from the worlds of music and car design to carve out an impressive career in the industry. He's best known for heading up Nissan design in the 2000s and 2010s. Under his watch, the company tightened up its styling operations and adopted a bold, distinctive new look. Before this, Nakamura led Isuzu's efforts. That might not sound very exciting on the surface, seeing as how the automaker gets by on trucks and sport utilities nowadays. In its heyday, it built radical concept cars and genre-defining production vehicles. Nakamura was right in the thick of it, and he's still making waves in the design world years after his retirement. Welcome to another episode of Industry Icons. Shiro Nakamura, a native of Osaka, was born in 1950. He grew up in an environment that nurtured his creative side. His father was a businessman who adored classical music, while his mother was a painter. His uncle, a professional violinist, no doubt played a role in Nakamura's appreciation for music. Conversely, almost no one in his life liked cars. This isn't surprising. Coming out of the war, conventional cars were out of reach for the vast majority of people. Many relied on scooters, motorcycles, or K-cars to get around. The only other person in his family who had a connection to automobiles was his uncle. It isn't clear if this was the violinist or a different uncle altogether. This relative left quite an impression on him. In a 2015 interview with Car magazine, he said that he let a 12-year-old Nakamura behind the wheel of his Mazda R360. He also kept an eye on what was going on in the American and Italian industries, directly citing General Motors, Pininfarina, and Giorgetto Giugiaro as inspirations. In the mid to late 60s, who wouldn't have been inspired by them? He decided to become a car designer while he was in high school, but there was a problem. At the time, there weren't any dedicated car design programs in Japan. There was at least one other designer who was in the same predicament. Nakamura opened an issue of Car Graphic and learned of Hideo Kodama, a Japanese car designer who worked at Opel. Kodama broke in by enrolling in an industrial design program. Nakamura had two schools on his list: Tama Art University, which was Kodama's alma mater, and Musashino Art University. Nakamura chose the latter. A modern industrial design program isn't going to be as focused on cars as a dedicated transportation design program will be, but a lot of the thinking and fundamentals will transfer over. Some courses even have car design tracks for those seeking a more specialized curriculum. Car design education in Japan wasn't nearly as comprehensive in his day. The professor didn't mention it once during the program. Nakamura became bored with the studies and sought another creative outlet, and that came in the form of music. He began playing the upright bass in high school. It had always been something of a diversion, but with the way university was going, he started to take it more seriously. The book Carmen 15, Shiro Nakamura by Marzia Gandini says that earning a living as a musician was a real possibility for him. It gave him everything that he wasn't getting in school: excitement, creative freedom, and more than a bit of money on the side. Music and design were creative fields, but they existed in two different worlds and vied for his attention. As tempting as it was to leave everything behind and strike it out on his own, he couldn't let his childhood dream slip through his hands. Isuzu offered him a job as soon as he graduated. He took it and kicked off a long career in car design. Music didn't go anywhere though. It would shape many of his principles and help him develop as a designer as well as a leader. Isuzu appealed to Nakamura for a few reasons. It was a smaller company, and he believed that he'd be able to make a greater impact. Isuzu also had a close relationship with General Motors. In 1971, GM purchased a 34% interest in the company. Nakamura hoped that there could be opportunities to work abroad and make connections with employees there. In many respects, it was the best of both worlds. His first assignment tested his abilities. The J-body cars were going to be critical products for GM. Offerings from European and Japanese manufacturers were taking the Detroit 3 to the cleaners. GM hoped that the J-body cars would turn the tides back in their favor. All of its makes got a version. Even Cadillac. Nakamura worked on Isuzu's version, which was known as the Asuka. That car didn't come a moment too soon. The aging Florian had been on sale since the late 60s and was long overdue for a replacement. He held his own during this high-stakes project despite his inexperience. Nakamura, eager to broaden his horizons, stepped into the next phase of his career. This wouldn't be in Japan or Detroit, but in California. Isuzu designers had the opportunity to go to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena on a sponsorship. Nakamura took advantage of this. He was already in the industry, so what did he have to gain from going back to school? The curriculum would be more relevant to him since it was a dedicated car design program. It also gave him a chance to push himself. After a conversation with colleague Hidetaka Negishi, Nakamura became even more motivated to excel here. Negishi had also gone to Art Center and told him what he should aim for during his stay. You will be number 1 at the Art Center, but that is not enough for you. It is too easy. You have to go further. How exactly would Nakamura define going further? Isuzu would only pay for a year of schooling. He could ace his classes, but anyone could do that. No, he needed to do more. He spoke with one of his professors and asked if it was possible to complete the entire degree in a year. If you know anything about Art Center, then this should sound crazy to you. The school is known for pushing its students to the limit. Normally, it would take a little over 2.5 years to complete. Nakamura wanted to condense all of that into a single year. His professor said that, yes, it was possible, and he could attempt to do so if he chose. Nakamura sacrificed his time, energy, and sanity in pursuit of his goal. In 1981, he earned his bachelor's degree in transportation design. He returned to Japan hungrier and more determined than ever. Isuzu assigned him to its advanced design department. He worked here until 1985, at which point he moved over to GM's advanced studio. It wouldn't be until 1989 that Nakamura would enter a position of leadership. This was a fascinating time in the company's history. Its passenger cars saw moderate success in the market, whether as Isuzu's or captive imports. It also showcased its engineering aptitude when it developed its own Formula 1 engine. The P799WE was a 3.5-liter V12 that produced about 730 horsepower, and the company didn't have to look far for a potential suitor. Lotus, another company under GM control, was active on the circuit. It had recently washed its hands of the unreliable Lamborghini V12 and was on the hunt for a replacement. The company gave Isuzu's motor an honest chance, even going as far as to install it into an F1 car for testing. According to an article from The Drive, it was shoehorned into the 102B, making a car referred to as the 102C. This is where the experiment ended. Lotus had concerns about its weight, as well as Isuzu's relative inexperience in this line of work. The company tried to give it a second life. Gordon Murray needed an engine for the McLaren F1. Isuzu offered to supply the 799, but Murray turned them down. He wanted a power plant from a more proven manufacturer. Things didn't work out in their favor, but just think. There's a universe where the McLaren F1 is powered by an Isuzu V12. The company also sought to expand its design influence. In 1989, it sent him to its European headquarters in Brussels and tasked him with establishing a studio in the region. Nakamura started with nothing, but soon established a base in Birmingham, England. Since he didn't have a staff, he worked with designers from Lotus. Those in the know might recognize some of these names: Anthony Lowe, Julian Thompson, and Simon Cox. As chaotic a time as this was, he still managed to make time for music. Carmen goes into detail about how he gained a deeper understanding of it. He worked with a cello teacher in Brussels and learned about music history at Cambridge. He even began making his very own violin. In a way, this reflected his newfound responsibilities at Isuzu Europe. He already knew what it took to design a car. Management required a new skill set, and he would need to approach the development process from a different angle to truly thrive in his new position. Stepping out of the studio trenches has a way of increasing one's grasp of car design. Similarly, creating a violin from scratch will enhance the connection that one has with music. There's also a link to the journey that automotive designers may go on in their careers. In referring to his violin endeavor, Nakamura said, "I do not have much time, and it is a project that will probably continue for many years, and I may never finish, but I like to know it is there, unfinished, ready to evolve." Designers are ever evolving. It doesn't matter how long they've been out of school or how many decades of experience they have. They'll always be students of their craft, and with the breakneck pace that the automotive industry moves at, they have little choice but to evolve. The first project that he was involved with in his new role was the 4200R concept. Isuzu unveiled the dramatically styled sports car at the 1989 Tokyo Motor Show. Cab forward designs were very much in vogue at the time, and the 4200R is one of the more extreme examples that I've seen in this vein. Organic shapes reign supreme. Take note of the stubby front overhang, oblong DLO, and elongated headlights and fascia elements. Stark, orthogonal lines come into the equation just ahead of the rear wheel. The intake's edge slices up past the haunch and defines the rear door. Yes, rear doors. More on those a bit later. Everything beyond this point serves as a nice contrast to the rest of the design. An attempt was made to tie these areas together. The cut line transitions into the vent, goes into the curve, and sweeps back into the panel gap. This intersection, with the curve, vent, gap, and door cut, is especially satisfying. Somehow, the designers integrated a small set of rear doors onto the body. They're hinged at the rear and slide back to aid access to the back seats. It was envisioned to be more than a sports car or even a grand tourer. Isuzu set out to build a bleeding-edge workstation on wheels. It came equipped with a host of features, including a fax machine. What I wouldn't give to see that thing in action. The 4200R truly encapsulated the spirit of bubble economy Japan. 2 years later, Isuzu unveiled an even more bizarre concept car, the Como F1 Super Truck. The F1 in its name comes from its engine. Engineers installed the F1-bound P799WE ahead of the rear axle. That's right, this is a mid-engine 12-cylinder pickup truck. And it doesn't have a typical bed either. The slick tonneau cover pops open like a trunk. Lincoln used a similar arrangement for the short-lived Blackwood, and the tailgate slides into the body to ease loading. And it has scissor doors because, why not? While neither of the aforementioned cars had a real shot at being built, they could have probably inspired the next generation of Isuzus. Not even that would come true. The company's sales had been on the downswing for quite some time, and the collapse of Japan's economy meant that the company had to make drastic changes. In 1993, Isuzu stopped building passenger cars. Whatever cars it did sell would be sourced from other automakers. Isuzu focused on what it did best: trucks and SUVs. But don't think that they'd be playing it safe. That very same year, the company unveiled the VehiCROSS concept. Isuzu wanted to get the car on the road as quickly and painlessly as possible. A 1999 Motor Trend article states that they skipped styling clinics and pushed finance check-ins aside in the transition to production. This also meant that time and resources were in short supply. That same article said that the development cycle was about half the length of a typical car. Tooling would have been a time and financial bottleneck. To get around this, Isuzu utilized ceramic dies. The aforementioned Motor Trend article states that a normal die could cost about $1.5 million and take 4 months to develop. A typical car could require between 20 to 30 of them. While a mainstream vehicle could warrant that kind of investment, a niche offering like the VehiCROSS wouldn't have much of a business case. Ceramic dies, on the other hand, could be made in about 6 weeks for between half and a third of what a conventional die costs. There was a serious drawback though. They weren't nearly as durable. Isuzu would only be able to get a few thousand examples out of the factory before the dies were finished. In 1997, the company released the car in the Japanese market. 2 years later, Isuzu discontinued it there and brought it to American shores. The production model largely carried over the concept's design. It wasn't a complete one-to-one transfer though. The concept sits lower and wider. It feels more car-like in execution. This is due in large part to a difference in architecture. According to a Curbside Classic article, the concept was built on a modified Gemini platform, while the production model used the short wheelbase 2-door Trooper platform. Compared to everything else they were building at that time, the VehiCROSS stood out. One of the most distinguishing exterior elements is the polypropylene bodywork. As the painted section curves inward, the darkened portion pillows out. Exposed screw holes further emphasize its rugged, utilitarian nature. Most other automakers wouldn't dare build a car with these out in the open, since they could potentially make it look unfinished. They work on the VehiCROSS though. The darkened hood, which was designed to reduce glare, ties into the two-tone look. Things only get stranger around back. Many off-road focused vehicles use exposed spare tires to suggest capability. The VehiCROSS has this too, or something like it at least. It's housed in a compartment in the tailgate. This has some interesting side effects. A cylindrical protrusion serves as a jarring change in surfacing. Down below, the hatch has to take on a rounded shape to adapt to the tire. Up top, the rear window has to curve heavily to clear it. While it's a striking detail, it also hampers rearward visibility. Isuzu was aware of this and offered a full-color backup camera in the Japanese market. It's housed in this ungainly enclosure. A cleaner integration would have been nice, but as one of the first systems of its kind, it isn't all that surprising. Unfortunately, this system was not offered in the American market. I'm not sure if this was due to regulations or cost. Coming back to the rear design, there's certainly a method to the madness. The body color and polypropylene sections are split across the middle. The visual weight of the license plate is offset by the camera housing. The window curve mirrors that of the hatch line, and from certain angles, the spoiler offsets the undercarriage. There is a certain charm to the VehiCROSS, though I do have a few gripes. The marker light on the side is pretty distracting. It's too large and too close to the polypropylene section. I'm also not sure about these lines on the doors. While they make the car feel a bit smaller, they also add more visual noise to an already busy design. Isuzu unveiled 2 VehiCROSS-based concept cars after its release. The VX02 was an open-top variant that was introduced at the 1999 New York Auto Show. Years later, cars such as the Range Rover Evoque convertible, T-Roc Cabriolet, and Murano Cross Cabriolet would make headlines using this blueprint. A commenter also pointed out that a character in the film, Mission to Mars, drove a VX02. That movie took place in the year 2020. Cars in that vein have found an audience. Maybe Isuzu was onto something. The following year, Isuzu unveiled the 4-door VX4 concept. While it definitely would have broadened its appeal, I can't help but feel that it looks a bit strange. It doesn't take the extra sheet metal very well. The rear doors are also much shorter than the front ones. If they were closer to the same size, then perhaps it wouldn't look as jarring. The VehiCROSS was always going to be a niche product, and in the end, Isuzu built just under 6,000 in total. 4,153 of them were sent to the American market. A company rep told Motor Trend that the diets could produce about 2,400 annually for the American market for 2 years before wearing out. Judging by the numbers, it still seemed to have fallen a bit short of their expectations. That's a small price to pay to have a cult classic in one's lineup. The next few years were a whirlwind for Nakamura. He returned to Tokyo in 1993 and worked as a design manager until 1997. After this, Isuzu sent him to the US and named him its VP of Product Planning. He was supposed to stay for 3 years, but the company called him back after 1. In 1999, He became a general manager and was tasked with reinventing their design strategy. Concepts such as the Kai in VX2 showcase a new, chiseled form language. Just as he was settling into his new job, he received a phone call that changed the trajectory of his career. Nakamura picked up and found himself speaking with a New York-based headhunting firm. It was calling on behalf of an unnamed major Japanese automaker that was in search of a new design chief. If he were interested, then he could fly to the Big Apple and interview for the job. Nakamura figured that Nissan was the company in question. After a tumultuous period, it entered an alliance with Renault and went through a major restructuring. Its design department needed a firm guiding hand. He balked at the idea, but not for the reason you may think. They called him on the company line. He wanted them to call him back on his personal phone. The offer seemed intriguing, and he became even more enamored with the idea after meeting with Nissan reps in New York. Still, he found it difficult to leave Isuzu behind. According to Carmen, he met with Nissan president Carlos Ghosn and told him that he was having an especially hard time making a decision. At the end of it, he asked for the end of August to make his choice. 6 hours later, Nakamura called him back and told him that he'd take the job. The top job at Isuzu was a high-stakes affair, but it paled in comparison to what he'd have to grapple with at Nissan. Its sheer scale presented an issue in itself. As one of Japan's big three automakers, the company employed a small army of designers and modelers, 700 in total. Isuzu's design team was about 100 strong. Nissan's staff was also split across Japan, Europe, and the US. Instead of working under a unified vision, they did things their own way. Early on, Nakamura focused on streamlining their operations and getting everyone on the same page. Nissan Design Europe moved out of Munich, Germany, and into the Rotunda in London. The building was constructed in the 1960s, but fell into disrepair. Nissan picked this location because of its size. It allowed the company to have a large, well-equipped studio in a densely packed urban environment. The company also maintained a technical center in nearby Cranfield, so the move also improved communications between designers and engineers. Nissan Design Europe has called the Rotunda home since 2003. Nakamura also took over direct supervision of Nissan Design America in La Jolla. In a 2004 New York Times article, he said that he didn't want to change the people. He wanted to rethink its approach and how it fit into the company's refocused plan. Many automakers at the time were going retro, but he was staunchly against the idea. Nissan would have to win back the hearts of car buyers by going in its own direction. So what would it do now? Models would be inspired by product design, architecture, and interior design. In a 2008 Reuters article, he said that he also looked to music. It wouldn't directly influence how the cars looked. Rather, music informed its overall strategy. He likened upscale cars to classical music in that certain foundational rules had to be followed, reasoning that luxury car buyers all over the world had a common eye. Infiniti went against the grain in its early years, so this could be seen as the brand sacrificing its character in pursuit of greater appeal. On the other hand, they'd failed to endear themselves to the public with their old philosophy. Nissan had more freedom to bend the rules. Nakamura compared its new design philosophy to genres like jazz and rock. These fields were more open to experimentation, and this was reflected in Nissan's models. This was especially evident early on, though it still applied later in its tenure. Most importantly, they would be distinctly Japanese products. A quick note. I've made dedicated videos on both the 350Z and 370Z, so they won't be mentioned here. If you want to learn more about them, then I'll leave links to both videos in the description. The Cuban Juke stood out the most in Nissan's lineup. The former had been in production since 1998, but it wouldn't reach the American market until its third generation in 2008. Its styling drew from product design more than car design. Nakamura even likened its rear door to that of a refrigerator. Asymmetry is also emphasized here, most notably in its wraparound glass motif. The door handle is placed on the left side of the rear to balance things out a bit. It's an ambitious design in a few ways, but in my opinion, it isn't as successful as its predecessor. It lost an edge that car had, both literally and figuratively. For a mainstream product, the Juke has very unconventional styling. It looked radically different from the Cube, as well as every other product in Nissan's lineup. The front end arrangement is especially striking. Lighting functions have been split between two separate housings. The ones up top have the parking lights and turn indicators, while the large circular ones house the low and high beams. Models equipped with fog lights have even more distinctive light signatures. The Juke, for as unusual as it looks, was a trailblazer in this regard. Many cars nowadays have a similar lighting arrangement. Modern setups typically aren't as strange as the Juke's, but the inspiration is there. Shiro Nakamura resigned from his position in March 2017 and was succeeded by Alfonso Albaisa. He didn't fade into the background after stepping down though. He launched two design studios, Shiro Nakamura Design Platform in Daikanyama, Tokyo, and Hollywood Hills Creative Platform in California. They assist other companies in creative endeavors, though they can also take on projects on their own. In 2023, the firm grabbed headlines with the AIM EV Sport 01. AIM was founded in 1998 and cut its teeth developing racing engines. It wanted to show that it could do more and began working on its own electric sports car. SNDP did the exterior design. If it ever reaches production, then the Sport 01 would definitely fill a hole in the market. It has 483 horsepower and weighs just 3,150 pounds. In the age of heavy electric sports cars, this one would stand alone. Other companies have unveiled concepts with a similar formula, but none of them have been built at scale. According to an article from Car Magazine, the company said that it could get 600 horsepower from the components used. It was much more than a paperweight. In July of 2023, the car participated in the Goodwood Festival of Speed. It was intended to be an engineering study, but AIM is considering a limited run after a warm reception at the event. We know how these things go. There's a high likelihood that this is as far as it'll ever get. I still have my fingers crossed though. Shiro Nakamura has left an impression at every automaker that he's been a part of. Isuzu released some of its most iconic concept and production cars while he was at the helm. At Nissan, he guided its design operations when the company was in its darkest hour. And he continues to make a positive impact in his new endeavor. Shiro Nakamura is definitely an industry icon.